folks, today's video is a little how-to guide on the Caro-Kann defense. Now, for those of you that don't know, it starts with e4 and c6. Thanks for watching, guys. Okay, but really, e4, c6, already this is the Caro-Kann defense. c6 defines the whole thing. You can't play it against d4, don't do this. Can't play it against, f4, whatever. This is strictly an e4 response. We go c6, and the main line is as follows with d4. You're allowing white to take a lot of center space, putting two pawns in the middle, and you clap back with d5. This is the key position that every Caro-Kann player will know. Now white has really only three main options, which is one of the plus sides of the opening, because it's nice and straightforward, and a lot of your plans are the same no matter which line you diverge down into. So, let's first of all start with the easy one, the exchange variation. You're going to take back, and quite simply, you're going to develop bishop, knight, play e6, bring bishop out, put a knight here or here. That's your simple structure, really. Let's say this pawn gets threatened. Obviously, don't forget that the queen's guarding it. Bring a knight out here. Maybe they go bishop d3. And blunder their pawn. They won't go bishop d3. That's my bad already. But let's say here, from here, if they go bishop d3, you would go knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4. Just, normal stuff. Nice, normal moves. You want to take this pawn, pin the knight here, and bring the queen out to b6. You can play e6, bring your dark squared bishop out. And the only move order implications with it are don't blunder your pieces like an idiot. And you can just follow these basic principles. Knight f6, short castle. After you've done all of that, kept things nice and simple, obviously bring your bishop back round this way if you need to. You've already used up like 8, 9, 10 moves without knowing any theory or any real prep. You're just playing naturally. That's the beauty of the Caro-Kann defense. Now, of course, not everybody's going to go for an exchange. One you'll see very often is the advance. Now, here you've got two options. I'm only going to explore one. You either have bishop f5 or c5. I would personally advise bishop f5. I've played both in the past. I just tend to have more of an affinity to this one, I guess. Again, personal preference. If you really want to explore the c5 line, you can. But we're going to show, well, I'm going to show you the bishop f5 version right now. So, again, I'll bring one of these knights out, and you're just going to go e6 immediately. Create a nice little triangle with your bishop outside of the pawn chain, so it's got nice and active. And the plan is simple. The reason people play c5 on move 3 is because now you want to play c5 ideally. Let's say they go c3, for example, strengthening the center, creating a pawn chain. You're going to smash it open with c5. You're going to put your knight on c6, queen b6. Peter doesn't always like queen b6, but I like it from a practical standpoint, just because of how weak that pawn is. The only drawback now, I will mention, is, okay, let's say we go here, cover up, white short castles, we go queen b6, take. This is all pretty normal stuff. We're on now move 9, and black is not very near to castling. This is the only danger I would say with this line, and it's kind of hard to avoid in an advance. But ideally, obviously if they take, we're going to take back with the bishop. That's great, that's exactly what we want, because it weakens e5. Structurally, it's just nice, it's very nice. But to try and get yourself castled, you want to sort of root your knight out of the way. Maybe you use your knight to trade for the bishop. Just drop back a move. Let's say they go knight h4. Maybe go knight e7, because that way you can take, you'll apply pressure to this weakness here. Again, this is a common theme in the advanced variation. This pawn can become very weak. You want to apply a lot of pressure to it. We'll see if he takes here. You're laughing, because you can go bishop e6. Happy days. But, as I say, that is really the only drawback to this line. Otherwise, nice and solid. Build a, what the hell? Build a nice light squared pawn chain with your bishop on the outside of it. Again, it's just simple to follow, nice and straightforward. So, to recap, they push, you go bishop f5, e6, and just play some normal moves. Now, their third main option is the do nothing variation, as I would have it. Knight f3 for starters doesn't work because you will take this pawn with a tempo, and after knight f6 you can kind of just hold on to the pawn. You're up a pawn, you know, they're not going to do that really. So let's instead look at knight c3. The main line goes as follows: take, knight f6, and then when they take, we check. You either get a Bronstein-Larsen or you get a Tartakower. I used to play the Tartakower a lot. I used to get starched in it every single time because I didn't learn the lines particularly and just didn't really like the positions that it gave. These double pawns are a bit of a mess and it's kind of hard to break out with them. Admittedly, if you go g6 and f5, you can build quite a nice light squared little duplex thing going on. Other than that, it's just not very practical, I don't think. So I'm going to teach you something a little bit different. Instead, we're going to go knight f6. Now, I've just told you, hitting a knight with check, a knight with a tempo is bad for white in this instance. Here, they can hit a knight. Okay, they don't take a pawn in the process. Drop the knight back. Because now, if you remember from the advance earlier, the plan is the same. We're going to go e6, and we're going to go c5. The only difference now is that the bishop is on the inside of the pawn chain. You'll have to put the bishop on d7 and bring it out round about this way. So just to showcase, knight f3, e6. Let's go, I don't know, bishop g5 possibly. Queen d6, hit this weakness, and you're primed and ready now to go for the c5 idea all over again. Put the knight on c6, and this time at least you can castle a little bit easier. That would be my recommendation. It's called the Campo Manes attack, and in game review it'll tell you that knight f6 is an inaccuracy immediately. It's not, I promise you, this is perfectly fine. It's its own theoretical variation, so can't be bad, can it? You know you're in the right place if you look to the right of your screen and there's words there that actually mean something. It says Campo Manes attack. That must mean it is something. It is a line. So, that is the crux of the Caro-Kann. Again, other sort of do-nothing variations. You can still go knight f6 all the same. Or if you get given this pawn for free, chances are you should just take it. Let's say they go f3 though. This is a different one. Now the pawn is not free. We are going to take it anyway. This is the fantasy variation, and this one can trip up a lot of people. It's not all unicorns and rainbows, it's actually quite miserable. But, again, just learn one way to play against it, because I'm promising you that it is perfectly viable. I'm going to take back, and go e5. This looks a little weird, I will admit. And it can be quite volatile, so this is probably the one where you might want to pay attention. Say they go knight f3, hitting the pawn. Obviously, they're not going to take because they don't want to lose their castling rights. Now we're going to go bishop g4. Here, the move that almost everyone plays and is the most challenging move. Let's say they play c3, for example. Well, c3 is quite easy. You can take, you can chop the knight off. There's not really any risk there. You just get a game. What do you do after bishop c4? Threat is obviously to take on f7, take the pawn, you get forked, and you probably lose. Well, the solution is quite easy. Don't panic. Just drop your bishop back. You protect f7. And if now you're watching this and thinking, oh, what about my pawn? My pawn's hanging. No, it's not. Oh. And again, here, you just get a game. You'll take this pawn, probably take back with the queen. You can kind of liquidate a little bit and take some of the pressure off. And then you go back to your normal development. Bishop out, knight out, short castle. You just have a game. Now, one final variation to display, devised by none other than Mikhail Tal. It's in the advance, so I probably should have shown it back there, but we move. This is the Tal variation. Doesn't look very intimidating at first, but the reality of it is you just burn a move, g4, and run the risk of getting your bishop trapped if you go back that way. So we're not going to do that. There are a couple sponsors to the Tal variation. Again, we're just going to learn one because it works. h6. Give your bishop a little square to fall back to. I'll go g4 because otherwise what was the point in playing the Tal variation? Trust me, they all do. Now, if you're playing a fast time control like bullet or blitz, always go bishop e4 and hit the rook. Because if they're pre-moving like little weenies, you know, I've had it a few times before where you just snap the rook and they resign. Failing that, they'll go f3 and you drop back. And this pawn is actually kind of stupid on f3 because you were going to put the knight there. Now you've got to waste a bit of time. I think it's quite clever personally. And again, it's just normal chess. You might want to play c5 and knight c6 again. Queen b6. The only line you really need to worry about is this weird one, e6. You can go fe6, but I'm going to explain something a little bit saucy, a little bit sexy. It's the computer best response, so, you know, at top level, people will know it. Queen d6. And after here and here, your plans are reasonably straightforward. You want knight f6, you want e5, knight d7, and you just kind of build a little peace cocoon around your king. Again, weird, and if you don't want to go for it, I completely understand. But this is how I play it pretty well every time, and I do actually have pretty good results in this, not to gloat. Obviously, a lot of people will be conscious of this check on g3. You might see like rook h3 or knight e2 and stuff like that. f4 also a move. Here you got queen e6 kind of options. f4 closes down e5, but if you go e6, put the knight on f6, try and get your bishop out after moving your queen out of the way. It's a little bit saucy, but the plans there are, again, reasonably straightforward. And just to showcase one final sort of bonus variation that you'll barely ever see is the bayonet attack. You know, little pointy swords you'd have on the end of, and then one grand in World at War or something. This kind of works the same as a Tal. And you might, oh my god, sound like Phil Mitchell. Again, you might see this sort of e6 thing. Queen d6 again works. Now, fe6 is probably even safer though, because there's no light squared vulnerabilities with the bishop being here. Or you might just get h4 again, trying to trap you. h5, and then we've just transposed anyway. You won't see the bayonet attack very often, but when you do, play it in a similar kind of fashion to the Tal. Just use your brain. That's the simple fact of it. Just use your brain. So thank you for watching, folks. And if you want me to get into real nitty gritty theory stuff of the Caro-Kann, I won't, because it's pointless.